Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Theological Leftovers. I actually have a couple of videos I'll probably throw out either today or throughout the week. We are going to continue to look at this topic of reconciliation and make our distinction between reconciliation and simple conflict resolution. And again, the point of that is to say conflict resolution is great. Resolving conflict is a good thing as long as the heart of it and the foundation of it is reconciling with brothers and sisters. And too often we set aside reconciliation and we resolve conflict by getting rid of people, by treating relationships like they're disposable. And we don't want to do that. Anyway, that's another video. This morning, what I want to share with you comes from our family's devotion. My daughter wanted to read through Exodus. That was her choice earlier this year as we kind of started the school year. And so we're making good progress. We're in Exodus chapter 36, and the theological leftover is left over from our devotion this morning because it applies, I think, to what happened here at Concordia on Sunday. After the worship service, we had a voters' assembly. Like many congregations have in November, you probably can guess what the main order of business was for that voters' assembly, because it's November, it's near the end of the church year. It was budget time, right? And so we voted for and accepted a new budget for the coming year. And it's after that, it's with that in mind that this was our devotion today from Exodus 36. Now, what's going on is the tabernacle is being built. There are all these wonderful artists and craftsmen, and God has given Moses instruction, but he's also given particular talents, and it would seem even particular inspiration, if not revelation, to these artists in this unique situation where they're building this tabernacle, where God will dwell in the midst of his people for the purpose of giving them forgiveness. And remember, where there's forgiveness, there has to be life and salvation. And boy, do they need that, because they're in the middle of nowhere, right? They've gone from being slaves to living in the middle of nowhere with a promise of a land to come. In the meantime, knowing that God is in their presence, giving them forgiveness, because they need that. And where there is forgiveness, there is life. They need that. They need that. And so with enthusiasm, they are going about the work of building this tabernacle, the different parts, the frames, all of the what they're calling curtains, to create this basically this giant tent, this portable tabernacle that they're going to use, that God is going to use for their benefit. And so all the instructions have been given. And then there's this interesting thing, and there's 2 points that I want to share with you from Exodus 36. It's starting with verse 3 is where I'm going to get started. And it says, "And they received from Moses all the contribution that the people of Israel had brought for doing the work on the sanctuary." All right? They still kept bringing him freewill offerings every morning, so that all the craftsmen who were doing every sort of task on the sanctuary came, each from the task that he was doing, and said to Moses, "The people bring much more than enough for doing the work that the Lord has commanded us to do." So Moses gave command, and word was proclaimed throughout the camp, "Let no man or woman do anything more for the contribution for the sanctuary." So the people were restrained from bringing for the material they had sufficient to do all the work and more. Wow. Yeah, after just having a voters' assembly where we voted on a budget for our congregation, you guys probably, everybody listening knows what that can be like. Again, and it wasn't, I don't want to make it sound like it was bad. It was perfectly fine, but usually we're looking and we're saying, okay, well, here's our expenses, here's our giving, they're not matching up. Can we do this? You know, there's a certain amount of fear and trepidation that comes along with budget planning and that voters' assembly. And here we have this example where they're building this sanctuary with all this gold and silver and fine weavings and all of this stuff. And the people bring every single morning. They keep coming back with more contributions so that people say, enough. They were overwhelmed by the generosity of the people. We have more than enough. And it says the people had to be restrained from bringing, right? That's unheard of almost, isn't it? They had to be restrained from bringing. They wanted to do more. But there's two sides to this. And it all has a wonderful foundation. The foundation's the main thing I want you to see. But first, the two sides. The one I've mentioned, the people have to be restrained. They so desire to give, to be generous. But also, the fact that the craftsman said we have enough, right, is kind of unprecedented too. It's not only uncommon for people to be so generous. It's uncommon for people to say, what I have is sufficient. Usually we say more, 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 right? And on one side we say more, 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 and the other side we say, on the one side we say, no more, no more, no more, right? So we usually have those two extremes where it's kind of this tug of war of give me more. No, I'm not going to give you more. Instead, this is the opposite, where the people, who were in need are saying we have enough, and the people who are in a position to give say, well, we have more to give. It's just such a wonderful thing to see, this kind of perfect cooperation of contentment and generosity. But what I want you to see more than anything else is the foundation. The reason why the craftsmen were able to say we have enough, and the reason that the people wanted to be so generous, is because God had very plainly put the task in front of them that they had to do. So it really wasn't that difficult to evaluate, for the people to evaluate what was needed. And it wasn't really that difficult for the people to be motivated to be generous, because they were creating a place where God was going to come and provide for them. So it's easy to be generous, right? God was coming to give them the gifts they needed so that they could be part of an eternal kingdom. Well, goodness gracious, why not be generous toward that? That's what I want. This other stuff, it fades away. It doesn't last, but God is coming to give me something eternal. I'm going to be generous. I'm going to contribute to that. That sounds good, right? And on the other hand, the people who are building this thing, they understood this is what we need. We don't need more, right? The foundation of the generosity and the restraint was the clear revelation of God, the clear task that he had given the people, the clear promise that he had made in terms of what he was going to do through these people for the people, right? So in other words, the foundation for the generosity and the restraint, very simply, is God being clear about his own work. And so this causes me to think again about your average voters' assembly and all of our budget concerns, and not just money concerns, but what should we be doing? What is the business of the church? Too often we talk about money as though it were something, or time or anything else, as though it's something. We talk about it, we kind of remove it from the conversation, from the foundation, which is God's revelation, the task that he's given us to do, the things that he's promised that he's doing for us and through us. We can't talk about budget or any of those things. We're going to struggle with generosity. We're going to struggle with contentment and restraint if we don't have a clear understanding of what God has promised. With this in mind, again, I want to encourage you, be in the divine service where you hear God's word, where you receive the gifts of forgiveness, life, and salvation. Open up the scriptures, study them, digest them. Be in fellowship in God's word, right? Be in Bible class. This is the foundation. This is where we get that clear revelation that helps us with contentment and restraint and generosity and all the wonderful things that we see working here in Exodus. And if that sounds like pie in the sky, that sounds like an impossibility, then read the rest of the book of Exodus. because these folks are constantly showing their lack of faith. They are constantly sinning. They are constantly failing. And yet here in this moment, they do something good, right? God does something good through them. And they're actually here for us a good example. This isn't pie in the sky. This is the power of God's word and what it can do in our midst. So I want to encourage you, get into God's word. And we'll probably be seeing you again real soon in a video, maybe coming up even later today. God bless your day.